Hey there, I'm Kyle, the Managing Director here at Reviewr. Reviewr makes it easier for you and your entire team to run things like recognition awards, grants, scholarships, competitions, and so much more, so you can focus less on things like spreadsheets and more on what you do best, and that's making an impact. Right now, most organizations collect, manage, and review those submissions using an average of 6 different tools hacked together in ways unintended, or worse, they comb through things like emails and spreadsheets or even physical hard copy paper. This is going to make everything from the applicant's experience trying to apply to the review committee's task of evaluating those submissions that much more challenging and less engaging. This brings us back to Reviewr, where we provide an all-in-one digital experience that's powered by proven recipes that transform those programs with all of the dedicated tools optimized for the task at hand. Reviewr is in a package of all the bells, the whistles, and the widgets, and a proven formula that streamlines operations and increases engagement for all. Here, let me show you.
All right, so I wanted to start things off with walking through like a landing page or a microsite or kind of the introduction where people will go to learn about your programming and actually begin their applications. Now, I pulled an example client of ours, the Austin Chamber of Commerce. This is their A-List Awards. And as you can see here, this actually isn't a Reviewr webpage. This is the Austin Chamber of Commerce's website. And the reason why I pulled this up, however, is that this is a very common workflow with how organizations will link from their web presence over to the Reviewr platform, whether or not that's your scholarships or your grants, your recognition awards. Now, some of our clients do have kind of a private programming where there is no public web presence. That's totally fine. You can ignore this entire section and focus more on like the data collection and the application side of things. That could be a password protected page. It could live on your databases, right? However you give people that link and get them into the form, that's up to you. This kind of is for those that have like a public presence and marketing of the program. So again, this kind of web concept is a very common application workflow of how people will transition from their website over to Reviewr. So what we're looking at is their website, and on here they have a whole bunch of information about the programming. So dates, deadlines, eligibility, some of the different categories that you can apply for, sponsors, things like that. What you will see here, however, is a big button that says click here to apply. It could be click here to submit, click here to nominate, whatever the verbiage you want. And then that link is what transitions from their web presence over to Reviewr. Now, where you send them is completely up to you. And I'm going to walk you through kind of both different models as well as kind of dive deeper into the application side of things. But the reason why I say that is that a lot of our clients will have information here, and then they use what we call a microsite or a landing page powered by Reviewr. And it's a good opportunity to reiterate dates and deadlines, eligibility. Quite frankly, people don't read. So all the really important details on your website that people are skipping over, those microsites serve as like another opportunity to kind of introduce that type of concept. Again, can't guarantee they're going to read it, but it does offer that ability. It's also a nice middleman between your web presence and then the Reviewr portal. With that said, some people may find it a bit redundant because they already have, as you can see here, dates and deadlines. So why would you do it again on a microsite? So in that example, they kind of bypass that completely and they link right to the application or kind of the profile creation page. So let's take a look at that. So this is an example of a kind of an out of the box, what a microsite or a landing page may look like powered by Reviewr. So Reviewr is a very simple platform to use. It's intended to be very simple. It's meant for non-technical minded people to be able to power. So information that goes into Reviewr powers this page. It's like a wiki editor. So all the content you see here was content put into our platform, and then in real time, it powers this website. But you're able to put in, descriptions and rules and downloadable material, basically information you want your audience to see before actually beginning the application form. As I mentioned, if you do find that a bit redundant and instead you'd rather go right to the account creation page or the submission process, that's totally fine. Instead, you actually link to a page very similar to this. Now, I'm going to pause here because this is a very powerful element within Reviewr, and this is the profile creation page. And the reason why this is powerful is Reviewr is a profile-centric company. So if you think through like a typical application process, be that scholarships, grants, nomination forms, nominee forms, conference call for abstracts, you name it. There's a ton of moving parts. You have obviously the application form, but then within there you have all the supporting material, the documents, the file uploads, the spreadsheets, the PDFs, the photos, the videos. You might be collecting external documents as well, so things like transcripts or reference letters. And then on top of that, there's also going to be at some point communication that goes on. There's going to be judging and selection processes. And for a lot of our clients, the application process doesn't necessarily end right away. Sometimes those that do get selected actually come back into the platform and they submit some additional deliverables or some additional documents. They might answer some questions, they might edit their information, or those that don't get selected might actually come back into Reviewr and receive communication and feedback on why. So the reason why I bring this up is that all kind of goes back to the concept of a profile, which takes all those different elements and those different activities that I just mentioned, and it aggregates them into one centralized place. So no longer are you collecting submissions through email or through documents or through forms, and then doing communication through either written messaging or email, and then having file uploads being sent to you here and back and forth, and spreadsheets and Dropbox links, you name it. Every one of those elements gets centralized into one very simple spot. Now, on the front end, that starts with an application, but kind of bigger picture is going to hold on to the entire what I call life cycle of the applicant. So let's kind of take a look. So I'm going to go ahead and create a fake account here. Again, it's very simple. It's just putting in the information of who the applicant is. And then as soon as they register, it drops them right into the entry form. Now, as far as the actual submission processes and the submission workflow goes, this is going to be relatively customizable. So all the content you see in the application forms, the dropdowns and the checkboxes and the text fields, all of that is controlled by you. If I had to guess, we have hundreds of different components and modules that make up our submission processes. So if you think through what I would consider your generic form builders, your jot forms and your survey monkeys and your type forms, Reviewr can do all that and then some. And it's really that and then some where I think we really excel. Collecting information is not hard, doing something with it is. And so kind of the main thing I want to walk through here are some of the main components or elements I think take our submission experience to the next level for both the applicants, but also for the review committees and for the admin. So what we're looking at here is a very dummy data submission form. One of the nice things about Reviewr is what I call adaptive workflows. So what's going to end up happening is as people are interacting with your submission processes or submission forms, based off of the answers and the information they put into the platform, different things can happen. So a lot of things come into play and some common use cases. So if it's an award program, maybe you have them pick award categories, and then based on their answer, specific questions are appearing. A lot of our scholarship clients will bake in eligibility criteria, or even grants will do eligibility criteria. In fact, they do full-blown eligibility surveys. So a series of questions may actually say, hey, based off of your answers and your responses, these are the scholarships that you're actually eligible for. So one is that we're not wasting people's time making them fill out a bunch of questions that A, aren't relevant to them, but also B, is we're also helping them kind of identify opportunities based off of the form logic that they wouldn't even been aware of in the first place. And then on the back end, which we will look at, there's some magic happening. So in this use case, if I applied to the Merlin Award or to the Nobel Prize, not only is it going to display questions relevant to that category, but it's also going to drop me into a bucket with all the other applicants who chose that same category. So now at that point, we can have different dates and deadlines. We can have different review committees. We can be evaluated on different types of criteria. All sorts of things, become available when we can do things like that. Now, as far as the form elements themselves go, Reviewr doesn't have, again, everything from drop downs to checkboxes to text entry to essays. In this use case, we've got some built-in character limitations, some countdown tools, but really the bread and butter of Reviewr is complex data collection. So not just information about the person, but also one is the private information, so data and security, so the ability to have encrypted information like social security numbers, obviously a SOC compliant companies that we have all of the proven data security infrastructure in place for you, but also things like file uploads. So within Reviewr, we can take in, ballpark about 100 different types of file uploads. And the best part about that, which we will look at also from an admin perspective, is how do you access the file? So every single document that gets uploaded to Reviewr can actually be embedded into the platform. So what I mean by that is when admins come in or review committees come in, and they're actually physically looking at a file, they can view it in Reviewr embedded in the window. So they can side by side leave notes and do scorecards and leave their commenting and their tools. So there's no need to actually download stuff and then go use third-party platforms like Word documents and Microsoft Office and have to come back. Again, the idea is to kind of take every element that makes the life cycle of the program and keep them in one centralized place. I also want to introduce a brand new feature that we have that's extremely powerful called supplemental forms, which gets used a couple different ways. So one really great use case would be things like reference requests or transcripts. We have a whole nother video on this topic on our website, and I can send that to you if you have any questions. But the best part about that is that within this workflow, very few reference letters are actually being submitted by the applicant themselves. They come from the reference. I've never seen a negative written reference being submitted, but it has a very private process around it. With that said, that makes managing those external documents or things like transcripts extremely challenging, because now you've got a bunch of data coming in from external sources that you have to pair up with where it belongs. It also makes the follow-up and the reminder process extremely challenging as well, because we don't know how many of these references have been requested, by who, what stage they're at, have they been started, are they submitted, etc. So in Reviewr, we have a process called supplemental forms. And what happens is you can actually put in like the name and email address of the person submitting that reference, and it actually sends them a notification through email and a link. And when they click on it, it actually brings them to the reference form to upload. And then as soon as they submit it, in real time, it's added automatically back to the applicant's profile, but stays hidden from the applicants. They can see which references have been requested, who's done it, who hasn't done it, so they can send the reminders, but they can't view the physical content within it. So really powerful feature to collect external data and merge it with the original source. Oftentimes it's also used as a way to manage nominations about a nominee and things like that. Again, I don't want to get too deep into that today. We actually have a whole nother video about the reference feature, as well as a shift in the industry that we've seen away from doing reference letters and instead doing reference templates. So if you're interested, check that out. But again, really powerful feature of collecting external data and then merging it together. So I'm going to go ahead and pause there. Again, there's so many elements that make up a Reviewr application process. At the end of the day, we work with you to kind of define what your data requirements and what your goals are. And we make sure that we not only get it built into Reviewr in a format that makes sense, but also can be reported on down the road. Some of the more small things, again, being that it is a profile-centric process, it allows applicants to save, they can log out, they can come back later, send some confirmation emails, they get thank you pages. So there's full kind of transparency and visibility on where they're at kind of in the grand scheme of things. So at a high level, that's the main ins and outs of the submission process. Again, a whole lot more can go into this, but I just want to touch on that today. So the next thing that we're going to look at is going to be the administrator command center and some of the tools that you will be using to manage the logistics of these different types of programs. All right, so I pulled an administrator command center, as well I like to call them, using some dummy data for the Reviewr scholarships to kind of walk you through, again, at a high level, some of the 5 or 6 main things that I think you'll be interacting with when it comes to kind of the day in the life of running scholarships, grants, recognition awards, whatever the programming might be. So the first thing that you as an administrator would see as you come into Reviewr is kind of your command center, or really the pulse of the program. So you're able to see right away how many days are remaining until whatever dates and deadlines you might have. And then of that, how many entries you've received, and then where the heck are they? So applicants will always procrastinate. So you're able to see kind of with the 3 to 4 days remaining, or even like the 1 to 2 days remaining, a whole bunch of people who have started to fill out applications or submissions that haven't yet finished. So in this interface, we can actually see how many totally finished applications we have, how many people are in progress, who they are, how far they've made it. There's built-in reminder messages that can be sent out. You can filter by them, things like that. And the thought process here is that hopefully as your deadlines approach, you can start to make that transition and see less and less in progress applications and more completed submissions who are coming into the platform. It's also nice here is that we're going to show visibility on some of the supplemental forms that we talked about. So again, we have a whole nother video that dives super deep into supplemental forms because it's a super powerful use case. But at a high level, it's going to show you, okay, great, of my entries, how many of them had requested forms about them, either grant follow-ups or reference requests or transcripts, how many are done, how many are in progress. And then from this interface, you can actually jump over to those and dive deep into the weeds on that data as well. So it's going to show you, again, not just who submitted the references, but how far they made it. You can send them reminder messages. You can view the content within it, things like that. All right, so let's transition from our kind of command center dashboard to viewing the submissions themselves. So I like to describe that as like a menu system. So as I come in here, I'm going to get a menu of all of the completed or not completed submissions that we've received. So you can sort and filter by whatever filters or parameters that you create. So categories, statuses, phases, in progress submissions, whatever it might be. But kind of narrowing our results down, we're going to get that listing of all of our completed or in progress submissions depending on your search. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Leslie here. And when I click on Leslie's name, hopefully that profile concept starts to come to light, more visual, as I talked about it earlier. So Leslie is an applicant, and we kind of take a virtual concept of binders, right? So we take all of her information and we break it out into tabs to make it super user-friendly to access on the fly what you need from her. So this is Leslie, and this would be all of the data we collected in Leslie's submission form. So drop downs, check boxes, essay questions, that's all showing up right here at the tip of my fingertips. File uploads. Again, I'm going to come back to this here in a moment, but you're going to notice that there's an image in here, there's a PDF form, there's some recommendation letters, there's some transcripts. So again, all the content collected either by Leslie or on behalf of Leslie is aggregated under her name. Now, if I scroll up, off to the right, I can actually send Leslie communication. So and everything in here can be configured. So if you don't want to use these features, don't worry, we can turn it off. But I can actually leave Leslie communication that notifies her she comes into Reviewr. She can see the communication left for her. She can respond back. If you want to log notes on here about Leslie, you can do things like that. If you want to move Leslie from one group to another, if you want to give her custom filters, you can do all that. What's great about this, though, is I click on attachments. Any file uploads that pertain to Leslie will show up here. In fact, maybe you want Leslie to come back in like 3 months or come back in phase 2 of your process and upload additional documents. She can also do that here as well. But you're going to notice that there's a listing of all of my files. And if I click view, it's actually going to embed that document right in front of me. So there's no need to download stuff, use third-party softwares like Microsoft Office, view the information, come back to Reviewr. Instead, you get it all right in front of you. We also have some pretty cool, file engagement tools as well. So maybe you want to leave comments on file uploads left by Leslie, almost like a collaborative tool with her. You can annotate on here, you can draw on here, all sorts of things. So not only are we collecting files, but we're able to view files and interact with them. Again, very, very powerful stuff. I also wanted to touch on the supplemental forms. Again, used in a lot of different ways. We have another video for this if you're interested. But right here, you actually see a listing of all of my reference letters submitted, as well as any transcripts that got submitted. So again, not only are we collecting reference files, but also reference forms. So Anne, if I click on her name, it's actually going to show me the form that Anne filled out on behalf of Leslie, and it attaches it right to her profile. So now think bigger picture. If you're doing things like recognition awards, this could be Leslie the nominee. And these might be all the nominations submitted on behalf of her. Again, aggregating things into one centralized place. What if this process is a grant or a scholarship and Leslie gets selected? And now you want Leslie to come back every single month or every quarter or once a year and submit some additional forms or some additional documentation. Leslie could simply click add new and then submit a form directly to her profile. So you have her initial entry form, and then any additional documents or additional forms that she fills out will also show up here. So again, I use the term lifecycle a lot. Full lifecycle management from intake of applications all the way until the program ends and she might be submitting thank you letters. Kind of moving on. The next thing that we're going to look at is going to be managing workflows. So I always like to call this groups and divisions. I describe it as a bucketing system, and it's probably one of the more powerful features within Reviewr. So it gets used a lot of different ways. It gets used as a way to manage categories, phases of review, locations, a combination of all of that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to walk through at a high level how it works and let your imagination take over and how you think it fits your process the best. But at its core, you've got a bucket, and you can call your bucket whatever you want. So in this case, we call it the Merlin Award. Now you have a bucket and you fill it up with submissions, typically automatically. So in this example, when people apply to the award program and they chose the Merlin Award or the XYZ scholarship or the XYZ grant, the system will recognize their choice and drop them automatically into that bucket. So now I've got a bucket full of entries. The next step is to fill up your bucket with a team to review. So in this use case, when these individuals come into Reviewr, they're only going to see the entries or the data in the bucket that they've been assigned to. So it's really powerful from a data security perspective of limiting who can see what. It's also powerful from a workflow perspective. So if it's an award program or a scholarship, maybe it's committee based and you have different committees who are evaluating different categories or subsets of submissions. It's great. You just fill up your bucket. When they come in, they only see what they're intended to. It's also powerful in the sense of managing within your bucket who can see what. So if I open my bucket up, it's actually going to show me two different lists. List number one is all of my applicants. List number two is my staff. So what I can do here is do a ton of really robust automation and randomization as well. Commonly used to manage compliance, where a lot of our clients might say, hey, if you apply for XYZ scholarship, you're going to get looked at by 6 random review members blindly. So that's how you do this in Reviewr, is you'd actually come in here and say, okay, let's grab my list of review team members and let's auto assign each one of them, maybe no more than 12 entries, but no less than 8. And the system will literally do the math and give each one an equal distribution, not to exceed 12, but not to go below 8. Vice versa, maybe you want to say, hey, for the sake of fairness, every single submission must get looked at by 5 people by random. So I can actually come in here, grab all of my entries and click auto assign and give each one no more than 5 and no less than 5. And then boom, the system is going to give every single submission 5 eyeballs on it to review. So super powerful. It also allows you to do manual pairings as well. So maybe there's a conflict of an interest, or what happens if a review member drops out at the last minute. So what you can do here is you can say, hey, let's go over to my review listing and say, okay, Erica, I'm going to grab Erica's name and I'm going to go ahead and click manually assign. And I'm going to pick and choose specifically from my list of applicants when Erica logs in, who she's going to have access to. Set assignments, and then boom. Now when Erica logs in, she will see a total of 8 people, and these are the 8 applicants Erica will review. So at a high level, you can have your review team look at all of the submissions or all of the submissions within their bucket, or you can start to do either manual or automatic pairings to make it a much more manageable number. So very, very powerful feature that controls, again, 2 things. Number one is what review members are seeing what submissions, but also if I go back, it manages workflows. So there's a progression system that we're going to get to that allows you to take the results of these buckets and actually move both submissions and review team members to the next review. So maybe in this example, this says phase 1. And when these people are done, you take like the top 10 and you advance them to what I would call phase 2, and then a separate team is in charge of reviewing phase 2. That separate team has different staff members. They also have different scoring criteria, different dates and deadlines, etc. So very, very powerful workflow management. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the review and selection process. So we just went through the bucketing concept where we paired up, our review team with our applicants. Now let's log in as one of those review members and look at what they can have access to. So within Reviewr, you can either add or you can import your review team. You can invite them to create credentials. You can set credentials for them and use our email template to notify them. So make it very, very simple for you to onboard your team and your staff. But when we go ahead and we log in here as Barbara, this is an example of what your review team would see. So right off the bat, they're going to have some type of instructions, attachments. It could be, help videos, PDF guides of how to use the platform, how to use the tool. If I go ahead and collapse those, but really the bread and butter is going to be the listing of the nominations or the applications or the grant applicants, whatever it might be that they're reviewing, that they're supposed to look at. Now, this interface can change a little bit depending upon your desired workflow. So a lot of our clients are blinding data. They're hiding personal identifying information such as name, demographic details, things of that nature. So it's quite possible that they don't see the name at all. All they see is a list of ID numbers, and they simply click on the ID and begin doing the review. Now, in this example, it does show names, so it's not blinded, but you can kind of hear what we're going after. So what's going to end up happening is the review team will see a list of all of these submissions that they're supposed to review. They would simply click on the name of each one of them, and then it pulls that profile concept. Now, this is super powerful because it's actually a split screen. So the left-hand side of my page is going to be the profile or the elements within the profile you want them to review. And then the other half of the page is the review and selection tool. Now, the whole review and selection tool is completely custom. So drop downs, checkboxes 1 through 5, 1 through 10, sad face, smiley face, good, great, ugly, whatever you want to evaluate, Reviewr can accommodate for. But behind the scenes, we call a generator that applies math, if you want, to the score sheet. Now, some of our score sheets are not math driven, right? It's comment boxes, it's deliberation tools. They're reviewing information and leaving notes and comments about it. There's no score sheet. That's totally fine as well. We've seen everything. In this use case, however, though, we're talking about score sheets. So the review team can actually side by side view the profile, the information of it. Each one has an independent scroll. They can jump into the attachment section. They can view the file uploads. They can log their scores. They can leave their notes. And you're going to notice that, again, all those documents still embed in front of us. They can go back to the form. They can jump to the supplemental forms. They want to look at Anne's reference letter. Boom, they can look at the documents of the reference all in one spot. You'll notice that the scores are actually going to self-tabulate as they go along as well. And then once the review team is done, boom, they press submit and they move on to the next. And in real time, the platform is going to log all of the scores and all of the results. Now, if I go back a page, what's also nice about this is that it allows the review team to see which of their submissions have already been evaluated, which ones they've started to review but haven't yet finished, and then which ones they haven't looked at. So a lot of our clients might come back in here. They might score 4 or 5 of them, leave, come back later, or once they finish reviewing, they may actually go back and reevaluate either the highest and lowest scores, and then there's some type of benchmark to compare them against. But again, the platform is super simple. Again, side by side, view the information, conduct the review and selection process. Now, from an admin perspective, which we'll look at here in a moment as well, you're able to track their progress. So you can see, okay, of my review team, who's last logged in, how many submissions are assigned to them, what's their progress percentage, you want to send them reminder messages, all that kind of fun stuff, as well as look at the results. And that's what we're going to look at next. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of the results. Now, from a results perspective, we have 2 different ways of looking at it. We have a reporting aspect, which is very comprehensive results. So it shows you all of the applicants who reviewed them. It shows you comments that were left, scores per questions, totals, averages, you name it. In this interface, though, it's used more as a way to quickly identify what's going on, how are people being evaluated, and then also control workflows by advancing people from one phase to the next. So in this example, I can actually sort and filter by, my different buckets that we talked about earlier. So phases, it could be categories. It shows you a listing of all of the applicants who are in that particular filter. It shows you what team members were assigned to review them and their progress. So in this example, I can see that Barbara scored it, but Erica hasn't even started yet, but Jade's in progress, right? So you can follow up with them and things like that. It's also great because it shows you both total scores per judge as well as their averages. So right off the bat, the system is going to rank them from high to low. Now, we get it. Scores may not always tell the whole story. If it does, great. You can take like your top 3 here and click advanced 2 and then move them to round 2 or round 3 or select them as recipients. Or this page actually commonly gets used as a deliberation interface. So either on a Zoom call or in person, this might get pulled up and a team might say, okay, Schmidt is our highest rated applicant. Barbara, you gave it a 98, but Simon, you gave it a 24. That's a pretty big difference. Let's kind of talk about why you evaluated it the way that you did. And in fact, you could actually click on the applicant's name from here and then kind of dive deep into their application. Let them talk about it. Let them deliberate. You can jump to the evaluation section. You can actually view the scorecards that were submitted by your judging team and how they evaluated it. And maybe you want to make changes. Maybe the highest rated applicant isn't actually the one that you choose because of external factors. Reviewr doesn't make decisions for you. We give you the power to make decisions that are data driven. So at a high level, it's kind of the main elements of Reviewr that I want to discuss today. Again, we focus on 3 key experiences: the applicant experience, the administrator experience, and the review experience. Now, baked within those experiences, we have a whole bunch of features and modules that provide a tremendous amount of value. Today, we just touched the surface on some of the main ones. If you want to dive deeper in any of these or kind of walk through more of what your process and what your workflow looks like, be happy to do so. As always, if you have any questions, please do let us know. We're always happy to help.